Welcome to the Forsyth Magazines podcast. I'm Brooke Eagle, your host, bringing you the stories of the people shaping our community. From business owners to local leaders, we'll explore their journeys, passions, and lessons learned. Let's dive in. Hey guys, we have a special episode today. We are here with Dr. Tony Frasca. He is the owner and founder of Zen Psychiatric Services. What's up? How are you?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm well. I appreciate it. I hope you all are too.
Yeah, thank you for making the trip from Mooresville up here to Winston-Salem.
It's been my pleasure. You know, I trained at Wake Forest, and so it's nice to be back. It's a little disorienting. A lot's changed in the years since
when's the last time you were back here?
Actually, the last time I was back here, I came for a concert somewhere in town, and that was like 2 or 3 years ago. But my training here ended in 2001.
Okay.
Graduated out. I was the chief resident of the psych program here, 2001. Stayed along for about a year doing research. I thought that was going to be my bag, but I like clinical work and seeing patients too much to be kind of just, academic.
Behind the desk.
Yeah, so made that change after that.
That's awesome. So we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and Zen Psychiatric Services now has 3 locations.
Correct.
So the first one started in Morganton.
Correct.
In 2020.
Correct.
And then your second location in Arden.
Which basically started at the beginning of this year? Beginning of last year.
Yeah. Okay, and then the newest location is in Mooresville.
Right, and we just opened Mooresville to treat patients no more than 2.5, 3 months ago.
Wow.
We're beginning to get a little bit of traction. Every location's been very different. I hope at some point to standardize them because there are aspirations to have more of them. I won't bore people with details as far as that goes, but every location has taught us something. For instance, this is the first location where we're kind of doing above ground visual advertising or engagement.
Okay.
Every place else in Morganton, for better and worse, but mostly for better, my reputation carried it forward long enough because that's where I've been for 15 years. In Arden, we've also kind of grown kind of organically by osmosis because we took over a very small practice that was struggling to do what we do, and we've made it better, and so we're growing organically. But here, it's a bigger playing field.
Mooresville is huge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so we are happy to talk to anybody about it. This is an
I'm glad
exciting thing.
that LKN Magazine could help y'all out with that.
Well, thank you.
So I want to talk about what service that you offered, and you talked about it a little bit, but I stopped you because I wanted to do it while we were recording. But you guys work with ketamine.
Yes, a specific kind of ketamine. We use a product that's brand named Spravato, Spravto. Okay, and what it is it's a more purified form of ketamine in a patented spray bottle, and it has to be administered under observation at a treatment center. There's a lot of reasons for the refinement of the ketamine and the patented spray bottle, many of which are mercenary. We all live in America. I didn't make this medical system. We just have to deal with it, okay? But among the reasons why it's been set up like that is that there's been a kind of a ketamine underground using original ketamine for mental health purposes, and it's a little bit like the Wild West, frankly. Okay, ketamine's had 3 periods in its history since the 1960s of being a pretty popular kind of recreational drug. The first was the 60s; everyone did everything, and its heyday for clinical use was during the Vietnam War. At the end of the Vietnam War. The second period where it had a big heyday was the 80s and the 90s during the rave movement, the club movement. Okay, people would take it, get comfortably numb, and go do their thing. Okay, and the third is now. Okay, again, it's in the public consciousness, and so although Janssen, the company that makes it, is certainly in the business of making money, and it is what it is. they were also under very strict guidelines. The FDA and the DEA and the DOJ and every other letter agency in the federal government insisted that if Janssen was going to try to harness ketamine for mental health purposes in a legal manner, they had to make it so that it would be almost impossible to divert. And quite literally, unless you're prepared to rob the UPS truck bringing it to us, you can't get your hands on this stuff.
Yeah.
And, the other thing about the nasal spray is original ketamine is effective for depression, okay? But it's not covered by insurance. Getting the FDA blessing is like, the keys to the magic kingdom in American medicine, okay? It brings you insurance coverage, which has opened the field to literally hundreds of people who we've treated who would have never got near it. But the other part of, the ketamine story is that, it's not a plaything. It's
it's not a recreational.
It's more dangerous than people give it credit for.
Sure.
And so, but with that said, a bunch of ketamine clinics exist giving original ketamine, typically by IV. Okay, and those clinics are typically run by anesthesiologists or pain management doctors, because those are the original legal, basically authorizations for ketamine. Mm-hmm. But when you get it like that for mental health purposes, it's cash and carry for $500, $600, $800 per treatment. Ooh. Okay, who can do that for very long? Not many people. And so this version honestly has opened the door to a universe of people with resistant depression who would not have had access to this because of financial reasons, or who frankly would have been afraid of it because of, the public zeitgeist around it, poor Mr. Perry, all the other stories about it. And it's been frankly a blessing to be part of it. It's been very exciting.
Tell me, from somebody who knows very little about ketamine, I've only heard about it in the recreational sense.
Sure.
But what does a treatment plan look like if somebody were to come visit you?
Sure. The standard plan with Spravato was 14 treatments over 12 weeks, twice a week for the first month, once a week for the second month, every other week for the third month, and ideally graduating out. Just in Morganton alone, we've treated probably close to 300 separate human beings. Okay, we've given, I don't know how many thousands of treatments at this point.
Yeah.
And we've graduated out about a third of our clientele. They'll take their 14 and pretty much be done with us, and they say, goodbye, Dr. Frasca. And I'm a good guy to say goodbye to, okay? It's my job to work myself out of a job, okay? But we also have a cohort of patients that come in who have been chronically depressed for so long that the ketamine helps them get them out of the hole, but they kind of need booster doses. And so we will have people that will come in once a week, once every other week, once in a while, okay? Or if they have a relapse. And I assure you, as best I can, that the people who are coming once a week or twice a week, they're not addicted to the drug. They're addicted to not being depressed. Yeah. They're addicted to not being suicidal. They're addicted to having their lives back. Yeah. And that's just okay with me. That's fine with me.
You're doing important work. I know that you guys are also involved with the Mental Health of America.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're actually going to a fundraiser in a couple weeks for that.
Excellent. Yeah, we want to be a part of every community that we're in, especially, we turned the corner financially a couple of years ago. There's not many clinics like ours around that are doing Spravato, because there are some tricks to the trade that we had to learn by hard knocks. We really did. But now that we know them, okay, we're thriving. And now that we're thriving, we're making sure that we give back everywhere we are. Really, since Helene, we've made a point of, donating at least $5,000 a month, to some agency or some organization or somewhere.
That's amazing.
And we're going to continue to do that. And if it continues to grow, we'll donate more, because, I believe it's part of the mission, to give back. The best part of what we do is that people who come to us, they're scared and they're tired, they're worn out, they've been through the mill with medications, okay? Yeah. They're not sure what to believe. Some come with hope, some come really skeptical about it. We have an incredible success rate in making people better, all right? And it's a joy to see that. And
Oh,
honestly, they come to love us, and we come to love them. And sometimes the goodbyes are a little bit tearful and a little bit fraught.
Yeah.
But that's what's made the business grow, is every time we send someone's loved one home looking and sounding and acting better, it sells itself.
That's amazing. I love the work that you're doing, because I think that most people go into the medical field to help people. And I think sometimes that kind of you can get away from even seeing that, but it sounds like you have not gotten away from that at all. And that is your core purpose. And mental health especially is it's so desperately needed.
Well, it is. There's not enough boots on the ground, okay? There's not enough attention to it. I won't get party political, but, it's easier to buy a gun than it is to find mental health services in most locations in this country. So I'll just leave that there. That's the last thing I'll say about that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I had to make my peace with this. At this point, we're partly in bed with this drug company, Janssen. And I've never been a drug company guy. All my service before this has been in public psychiatry. I met my COO working for an ACT team, which is an assertive community treatment team, which is a group of people that go out and make house calls on people who have required frequent hospitalizations. And sometimes they don't have houses. I mean, literally, with this woman to the right of me, I've been in drug houses treating abscesses because of dirty needle shots. I've been tracing people down in the woods to where they're camped. And before that, I was at Broughton. I ended up at Broughton as the chief psychiatrist there because of Wake Forest. When I trained at Wake Forest, Broughton and Wake Forest had a very tight connection. Ended up going there reluctantly, like all of my predecessors did, and fell in love with the place because I was treating the sickest of the sick and the neediest of the needy. Paradoxically, I had to make my peace with dealing with a drug company like we do with this, but paradoxically, it's freed me to do the thing that I want to do, which is to take care of people and get them feeling better again. So it's been an exceptional experience. I never wanted to be a doctor businessman. I never imagined this future for me. If someone went back in time to 2019 when this medicine came out and said, Tony, you're going to be doing podcasts and talking to people and basically being not a prophet, but proselytizing for this particular medication, this particular mode, I would have told them that they were crazy. And I'm a psychiatrist, so they should take that seriously. And the other part of this that I think it's important to touch on is this is just the beginning, okay? My interest in this isn't by accident. The psychedelic drugs are going to be harnessed for mental health purposes. Ketamine, Spravato exists because of years of anecdotal evidence of people using it as a party drug, and then their family and friends telling them they seemed less depressed or less down afterwards. Okay, and that led to the experiments, to the basically the research programs with original ketamine that basically proved the point. Okay. And then that led to Spravato. The same thing is happening or will happen with everything, with psilocybin, with LSD, with DMT, which is the main medicine, ayahuasca. As I've said before in other places for longer talks, this is going to be the second psychedelic revolution. This one will be televised, for better or for worse. But for better or for worse, it's going to be pay-per-view. Okay, the last one went off the rails because the drugs were powerful and the counterculture represented a danger to the culture, okay? And so it got squashed, and a lot of research that was very promising, that was already happening in the 70s, got absolutely squashed for decades. Now we have a second chance.
Okay.
Like I said, I had to make my peace with it. A younger, more idealistic version of me would have kept his hands clean and not touched this. And that's the truth, okay, because of the drug company aspect of it. This somewhat older version of me, when he saw the benefits of it for the first few people I gave it to in the hospital, tossed and turned a couple of nights, and came to the conclusion that I could either, keep my hands clean and stand on Mount Self-Righteous and look at it pass me by, or I could get in the parade. I could be part of the revolution.
Good for you.
And so that's been my journey to do it.
Yeah. My next question is, for people who are listening to this, what would be an ideal patient for this drug?
The original indications for Spravato were treatment-resistant depression, defined as unremitted or not continually remitted depression after having at least 2 antidepressant trials. Another of the original indications for Spravato was acutely for suicidal ideation. Administration of ketamine of any kind reduces the intensity of suicidal ideation. Those were the 2 original pathways, and those are still the 2 main pathways, especially the first one, the treatment-resistant depression. That's been our stock and trade since we started. People who have been through the mills with medicine. Okay,
because it can be discouraging to try all these different medications, and it takes 30 days to get in your system.
Exactly, exactly, and I will come back to that point. Thank you for reminding me of that. We now have Spravato is now indicated and available as monotherapy for depression, so people don't have to go through the mill anymore if they don't want to. Okay, but your point about that and about people having to wait a month for benefit, I really want to touch on. It is true. This is a 3-month course of treatment. Okay, but typically by the 3rd week in, the third week of the first month, where people are getting twice a week, that's typically when the patients or clients themselves will begin to admit that they're feeling better, but we see it much sooner than that. Wow. And I always tell, when we do evaluations, I always tell them, typically it takes the 3rd week before you'll begin to notice it or admit it. Sometimes later, especially the deeper the hole you've been in, the longer you've been in it, the longer the climb to the surface. But it's unambiguously proven to us, that people's loved ones or close associates see small, subtle improvements as early as the 1st or 2nd treatment.
Wow.
We have, this will be maybe embarrassing and maybe wrong to say, but, we end up by the 2nd week with female patients seeing a lot more cleavage. We see women trying to be women again, makeup, earrings, dress that's a little more flattering.
Which you see this so often, so I'm sure these little signs really stick out to you.
Well, absolutely. And then the male patients, they'll start to flirt with the nurses. Okay, those are signs of life, and other subtle things too. We'll notice that people who basically are halfway mute when they come to see me for the evaluation will, by the 2nd or 3rd treatment, not even the 2nd or 3rd week, but by the 2nd or 3rd treatment, be talking to us more.
Wow.
And part of that, I understand, is the fear factor, which is we're no longer strangers to them.
Yeah.
But the other part is absolutely, definitely the medication.
Yeah.
They won't admit that they feel better, but it's obvious to us that the tide is beginning to turn, and it's been a great joy to be part of. It really has.
Yeah, that has to be so rewarding to see your patients.
It really has been very rewarding.
So, do you need a referral to come see you guys?
Ideally, yes, but practically, no.
Okay.
No. People can call us directly. Our main number. Am I allowed to do that?
Sure.
Are we doing that?
Yeah.
Our main number is 828. Yes, 0892. Thank you. That's why I have.
And we'll put the link to your website and to your phone number in our show notes.
Right.
So people
and we also have a
it.
website, zenpsychiatric.com. Okay. And we keep staffing up. We keep getting bigger. Okay. We have 2 ladies who are excellent who answer the phones now. If folks want to call us to just ask more, to just kick the tires, they're not going to get scolded for doing that. They're not going to get chased away. We understand. I myself, again, not to be too revealing, I've had major depression. Okay, my index episode was during medical school. I didn't get help because I wouldn't allow myself to be medically diagnosed. I wouldn't give in to the people who I felt were making me depressed. Okay, that was the depression talking to me. That was the illness. Okay, talking to me.
Yeah.
So I know what it's like to deal with that. Okay, it takes a lot of guts and a lot of bravery.
To pick up the phone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage anyone hearing this, okay? I promise you, I swear to you, if you call us, okay, you will be answered by one or two very, very lovely young women who know quite a bit about how we operate, and you will not be scolded or chided or made to feel stupid or chased away.
Yeah.
We want to help people.
And it means extra coming from someone who has experienced depression themselves.
Absolutely.
I think it would be a lot harder for you to relate if you had not been through that.
It's the three things made me who I am, and I pride myself on being an excellent psychiatrist, if I can brag a little bit, okay? I am towards the tail end of my career, okay? But three things made me who I am and made Zen possible. The first was my training at Wake Forest here. When I was here at the turn of the last century, which makes us all feel old, okay? When I was here at the turn of the last century, Wake Forest gave me excellent training, okay? The second was Wake Forest relationship with Broughton Hospital was my finishing school, okay? I saw things and treated illnesses I had only read about in books, okay? And then the last but not least thing, okay, that has made me who I am and brought me to this place, well, actually there's four. The third thing was my depressing experiences, okay, and my own relationship to the medical system. And the last but not least, again, to be self-revealing, is back in my younger days, okay, I've had psilocybin, okay? I've had LSD, okay? I've had mescaline. I know mescaline in particular changed my life to the better to this day, okay? The other experiences were mostly positive but mixed, okay? So I already knew the power of those drugs, okay, from personal experience prior to medical school. So in a way, this was a coming home to me in a way.
Kind of a full circle.
It does feel like that when and it didn't really occur to me till I just said that to you. It seems like I've completed the circle. Hopefully I'm not done. But
no, I think you're just getting started.
But those are the things that have made Zen possible. And what's made it grow is, excellent people like, my CEO, Erica Ryan.
Takes a team.
My IT and marketing man, Jesse Myers, and now everyone else who's come to us. I have a cadre of incredible nurses, incredible nurse practitioners. There's another physician who's going to be, supervising Mooresville, Brian Lewis, who comes off as gruff but is a big teddy bear and has got his heart and his head in exactly the right place. It's just... everything's grown organically from Zen, and it's grown organically because we've been doing the right things for the right reasons. Yeah. And that makes it easy.
Yeah, and you're just out there to help people. That's
we are.
Not to oversimplify it, but that's really the point.
We are, and we found, and to be fair, I went from having 0 employees 2 years ago to having 30.
Oh, goodness.
I was going to say 28. So we've found a way to do well for ourselves by doing good for other people. Okay. Everyone who works for us at Zen makes at least or better than a living wage. Okay. The clinics are overstaffed in terms of not just numbers, but talent. Okay. We recruit for heart first and compassion first. And then we recruit for people who've had extensive mental health experience in treatment second, okay? And so the clinics are fully capable of handling anybody that has a difficult emotional time, which is one of the possible consequences of taking the medication, which is why you want to take it under some supervision. So it's like I said, if you told me in 2019 it was going to be like this, and I'd be sitting here having a conversation like this, I would have tried to find a way not to commit you. I would have tried to find a way to call your family and see if I could get you to go home rather than go to the hospital. Yeah. But here I am, and here we are.
That's awesome. So one thing I want to touch on before we wrap up is I think there's and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there's a stigma, especially with men, that they feel like they can't admit that they have a mental health issue, even more so than females. So do you have any thoughts on that?
It's true, first of all.
Yeah.
Okay. But we've seen a change in it. At first, our patients were 80% female.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now I'd say it's more like maybe, it's still maybe 70 to 60% female, but we are increasingly getting men coming in. Okay. And what I would say is, to go back to my point. Okay. Men and women are built differently. I mean, psychologically, like I said, my first major depressive episode lasted a year longer than it should have, okay, because I was too stubborn and too proud, okay, to admit that I needed that help, okay. And that's a factor for men more than women mostly, but not exclusively.
Sure.
And what I would say to, any guys listening out there is, it takes a lot of guts to admit that you need help. I mean, for me personally, I'm going through some physical health problems myself as we speak. Help is the hardest word for me. It's always been, okay? And I think it is for a lot of people, but especially men. And again, I make a solemn promise. If you call us to talk to us, you're not going to be made to feel small. You're not going to be made to feel like an idiot. You're not going to be chased away. You're not going to be an annoyance, okay? You're going to be someone who we're going to want to talk to and try to figure out how we can help, if we can help.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Dr. Frasca, it was so much fun to learn about this and to meet you and hear about your 3 thriving locations. Do you think you'll have a 4th location anytime soon?
That's in my goals and my hopes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Winston-Salem, we're here.
And Winston would also be a homecoming.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And so it's been a pleasure talking about it. I can ramble about this for hours. It's
but you do have patients. Like if people were to drive from Winston, you have patients that are
my God,
that drive
yes.
to see you. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the I mean, like I said before, I never wanted to be a doctor businessman, and holy crap, I started out as an absolutely incompetent businessman, and now I've risen to the ranks of the merely inept. Okay, I tell my staff all the time, and they get sick of hearing it. I tell it like a joke, but it's not really a joke. They all deserve a better COO. They all deserve a better CEO than me. Okay, they have an excellent COO.
I don't know about that.
Okay, well, but the bottom line is among the several secrets that we have learned that have made the clinics work is ease of access. Okay. One of the reasons the first one in Morganton, of all places, began to thrive and is actually busting out of its seams, we're going to expand it, is because we're literally right off exit 104 on the I-40. Okay. In Arden, we're literally right on Hendersonville Road, just literally a mile south of the Asheville city line. Okay. Here in Mooresville, we got as close as we could to the intersection of I-40 and I-77 as we possibly could. Okay. Our drive here today was an hour to talk to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's very doable.
Yeah.
To come see
for
us.
a treatment that's going to change your life, I'd say an hour drive is well worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, folks have to have a driver to go home. Okay.
Good to know.
We do in certain cases provide some transportation. Okay. We do it. We do as much as we can. We don't charge people for it. But we're just an hour away from Winston.
Awesome.
Okay. And that's one of the reasons why we came to Mooresville, which is that we'd be able to reach this community. We're an hour away from right here. We're probably 25 minutes away from downtown Statesville. We're probably about another 30, 45 minutes away from Wilkesboro. I mean, the locations are chosen for the likelihood that people within a catchment, within visual distance or radio distance might hear about it and be willing to come see us.
Sure.
In Morganton, we've had people come from Boone. We've had people come from further past Boone, actually.
Wow.
Before we opened Arden, we had a cohort of 5 or 6 patients who came from Asheville. And of course, they're very, very grateful that now they don't have to drive an hour to come see us.
Yeah.
And so that's been part of the plan. That's been part of the secret of the success is the locations.
I love it. Well, it's been so much fun to talk to you. Thank you for making the drive up here.
My pleasure.
Coming on the podcast. And you can find out all about Zen Psychiatric Services. We're going to put their website in our show notes, and you can also read about them in LKN Magazine. And I think that's a wrap for today. The views and opinions stated on this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting companies. This podcast is copyrighted and cannot be reproduced without expressed written consent of Forsyth Magazines Incorporated. Ooh, that's a mouthful.